Leader of the oppressed, solved. Everybody ready? The law's evidence is answered two ways by Lauren. A, the public-private dichotomy is what dictates what is politically possible in this status quo. Even if her art or aesthetics is part of this, the idea of what is politically possible is only identified in the way in which we construct the ideas of public and private dichotomy. B, we say that the affirmative is a prerequisite for the criticism. The ability for those communals to disrupt the dominance of politics will fail. It will be told it has no place within our current function of politics. And two, there is no warrant as to why it's a prerequisite to affirmative. Cross-examination proves that they would have to take steps to speak for others before their communals or their ability to create these theaters of the press would even be possible. You can drop down to the Fiato's illusory debate. We have a couple pieces of offense against this. First, the Coleridge evidence indicates that even though we are not real-world policymakers, we do not effectually change. The idea that we can act as policymakers disrupts the idea that we cannot make change in the first place. It says that we have ideas that are relevant to the political process, and the idea, or the fact that we do have ideas that are relevant makes us able to articulate those to the way that the current politics works. Also, our Carlson evidence gives us this kind of indicates that law, the idea that we can study law allows us to change the way law works because we can do things like criticize the way that laws constitute within the status quo. Our Mitchell evidence indicates that the way that we use politics within the idea of debate creates a democratic empowerment, or that we create an activist, and this answers back all of their evidence, which indicates that we don't lead to any change because it indicates that the critical thinking that is created within debate, or the critical thinking that is actuated, and when we think about the ways that we can create political change, that it gives us the tools in which we can go out and create the political change. They say that we create a new oppressor by asking you for the ballot, but that is fundamentally not true. Even if you vote against us, or you think that even if we don't ask for your ballot, we still think that the debate has importance. Our argument is that the politics we envision, it questions the way that the public-private dichotomy affects the way that politics exists within the status quo. You can drop down to the 2AC number 3 that our discussion of international law leads to change. They say that the author flows their way. That is fundamentally not true. That evidence indicates that we have to discuss the way that international law can be changed within domestic policy to understand that the ways that international law effectuates the ways that our identities are constructed within the status quo. This answers back their argument that the K is a prerequisite because it says that the only way to challenge the identities or the constructions that are imposed upon us is to challenge the ways that international law dictates those upon us in the status quo. This is given to us by our Copeland and Raskin evidence that indicates that you are correct, that international law and domestic policy is bad in the status quo, but only when we take steps to engender the ways that international law exists in the status quo can we change the colonizer versus colonized mindset and flip it on its head so we can control international law to be dictated by the identities that we self-identify with. This answers back all of their arguments on the framework debate. Framework for the oppressed. The first argument you can pull across is the public-private dichotomy. This is given to us by the Tickner evidence. Discussion of the feminist perspective allows us to debate the relationship between militarism and structural violence that exists in the status quo. These discussions bring into perspective the distinction between the public and private realms within the domestic politics. B, Tickner indicates that this is beneficial because it allows us to challenge these gender hierarchies and bring to light the ways that they manifest in world politics. This allows us to begin to develop the ways to move outside the way these hierarchies are constructed. Their argument that our advocacy of engendering violence doesn't create actual change or political action is exactly what McKinnon criticizes. A, the idea that we should relegate our concerns of gender violence to individual situations or the theory of the press reinforces the idea that we should relegate women's rights to the private sphere. Or says that tells us what we can act like. That is fundamentally not our argument. Our argument is that not that we should say that this is their identity or this is what we should do. Just that there may be action that we should be able to take. VAWA does not say that you have to get gender animus, or does not say that you have to go to the courts to get a civil remedy. It says that if you want to get a civil remedy, that option is available to you. That you are no longer relegated to the private sphere. The B subpoint, the Campbell evidence is pretty much on fire as to why they relegate us back to the public-private sphere to say that we should not have a discussion about about what is politically possible, not to be able to discuss how we should act towards others, is to say that those people should be relegated to their own private sphere, that they should only be able to talk about their own pressure, not create political change to effectuate what is actually being dictated upon them. They make the argument that we lead to co-option, or that we lead to another dominance upon the system, because they will simply co-opt their system and create more modes of identification. That's answered back both by the McKinnon evidence as well as the Raskin and Copeland evidence that indicates that we create a new form of international law where the colonizer or the colonizers are able to dictate international law and places their identity upon it. Go to the solvency debate. The first argument they make is the double-minded argument, that the victimization argument, but that is not true. Under the world of the plan, rights in international the rights in international law, as per our Copeland evidence, gets redictated, so people are able to say what they want to be done with the international system. Also, this is part of the status quo. Our argument is for the one it sees that states are able to define what is and what is not rape, or to say that they are able to biasly objectify women in the status quo. There's only a chance that we are better than the status quo. They also make the argument. They also make the argument that we reify it because we create them as objects. That is not true. We do not create objects because we say that things like police prosecution of bias should not be allowed to go on. If a woman wants to get a remedy for her rape, then she should be able to do so. At the bottom, he makes the argument that it leads to gender animus and rape hierarchies, but that is one existent in the status quo, and two, that is fundamentally not true. The vow just says that if you are raped, you can seek animus. It does not make any difference between different types of rape.
539.